My name is Daniel. Back in late 2023, I moved to a new city for work. Finding a decent apartment wasn't easy. Everything was either too expensive or already taken. Eventually, I found an older six-story apartment building. The rent was surprisingly cheap. At first, I thought I'd just gotten lucky. Looking back, I don't think I did. From the outside, the building looked completely normal. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make you stop and think twice. But the moment I walked inside, I noticed something. It was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The uncomfortable kind. The kind that makes you feel like someone is standing nearby, watching you without making a sound. My apartment was number 504. Directly across the hallway was apartment 503. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked, went to work, came home, tried to settle into my new routine. Then, I started noticing something strange. Every single morning, there was a black plastic bag sitting outside apartment 503, always in exactly the same spot, neatly placed, right beside the door. But I never saw anyone put it there, and I never saw anyone take it away. Every evening, it was gone. I convinced myself someone must be leaving for work before sunrise. That explanation made enough sense, so I stopped thinking about it. About a week later, I got home unusually late. Around 1 in the morning, the elevator opened onto my floor. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I froze. Apartment 503 was slightly open, just a few inches. The hallway lights barely reached inside. Everything beyond the doorway was completely dark. I stared at it for several seconds. Then, I heard it, very faintly. Help! I wasn't even sure I'd heard it correctly. I took another step. Then again, help! A woman's voice. Weak, almost whispering. My heart immediately started racing. I reached for my phone. I was about to call 911 when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. An older man, maybe in his late 70s, was slowly climbing the stairs. The moment he saw me standing near apartment 503, his expression changed. He looked terrified. "Don't," he said. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "Don't go near that door." I pointed toward the apartment. "I think someone inside needs help." He shook his head, slowly. "No, you didn't hear someone asking for help." I frowned. I literally heard. He interrupted me. "If you want to stay alive, ignore it." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, he quietly walked past me, unlocked his apartment, stepped inside, and locked the door behind him. 3 separate locks, one after another. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I asked the building manager a simple question. "Who lives in apartment 503? He stopped what he was doing, looked directly at me, and said, "No one." I laughed. "I heard someone inside last night." His face didn't change. Apartment 503 has been empty for over 2 years. A cold feeling ran through my body. I tried asking another question, but he simply walked away without saying another word. That night, I made a decision. Whatever was happening, I was going to find out. Around midnight, I turned off every light inside my apartment and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, silent. Then, without warning, apartment 503 slowly opened by itself. No footsteps, no voices, no movement, just the door opening. Little by little, I unlocked my own door, stepped into the hallway. The moment I did, my apartment door slammed shut. My heart nearly stopped. I spun around. Locked. My keys were still inside. For the first time, I realized I was trapped. And then, from inside apartment 503, a calm voice whispered, almost as if it had been waiting for me. Finally, you're here. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My apartment door was locked. My keys were inside. The hallway was completely silent. Then, the voice came again. You're late. It sounded closer this time. Not loud, just calm, like someone standing in the darkness, waiting. I forced myself to breathe. This has to be a prank. That's what I kept telling myself. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone. I tried calling 911. No signal. Not one bar. That didn't make any sense. I'd had full service just a minute ago. Then, every light in the hallway went out. Click. Darkness. Only the dim red emergency lights remained. The entire hallway was now glowing in a dull, blood-colored light. Slowly, I looked back at apartment 503. The door was opening even wider. No one was standing there. Nothing moved. Just darkness. A darkness that somehow felt alive. I took one step backward, then another. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I almost dropped it. An unknown number. One new message. Don't go inside. I stared at the screen. Before I could even react, another message appeared. IT wants you to look at it. A chill ran through my entire body. Who was sending these? Who even knew I was standing here? I quickly looked around. The hallway was empty. Then, a door opened behind me. I turned. It was the old man. He opened his apartment just enough to look outside. The moment he saw me, he whispered, "Inside." Now, I didn't ask questions. I rushed in. The second I crossed the doorway, he slammed the door shut. One lock, two locks, three locks. Then he pulled every curtain closed. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I broke the silence. What is apartment 503? The old man looked at the floor. His hands were shaking. Then, very quietly, he said, 2 years ago, a man lived there alone. He kept telling everyone. Someone knocked on his door every night. Every single night. The police came. They searched everything. They found nothing. He paused, then continued. A week later, he disappeared. I swallowed. They never found him. The old man slowly shook his head. They only found his phone. I felt my stomach tighten. There was one last video. The police never released it. But I knew one of the officers. He told me the man was staring into the camera, crying, and the last thing he said was, "The old man looked directly into my eyes. It's pretending to be me." Silence. Neither of us moved. Then, the landline phone beside the couch started ringing. Ring, ring, ring. The old man froze. He looked terrified. After the fourth ring, he slowly picked up the receiver. He didn't say hello. He simply listened. I couldn't hear a voice. Only slow breathing. Very slow. Very calm. The old man's face turned pale. Without saying a word, he gently placed the receiver back. I whispered, "Who was it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked behind me. Very slowly, he raised one shaking finger, pointing toward the wall. There! I turned around. A small mirror hung above the table. At first, everything looked normal. Then, I saw my reflection, and standing directly behind me was someone else. Tall, completely still, its face hidden in darkness. I spun around. Nothing. No one. The room was empty. My breathing became faster. I looked back at the mirror. It was still there, exactly where it had been. This time, its head slowly lifted, and then It smiled. Not a normal smile. A smile that stretched, far wider than any human face should. My heart nearly stopped. The old man closed his eyes and whispered, "It knows." You can see it now. I couldn't breathe. The thing inside the mirror was smiling at me. Slowly, its smile became wider, until it no longer looked human. I forced myself to turn around. Nothing. The room behind me was empty. I looked back at the mirror. It was gone. For a brief second, I actually felt relieved. Then, knock. 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment. Knock, knock, knock. The old man's face turned completely white. He whispered, "No matter what you hear, don't open the door." Another knock. This time, a familiar voice. "Mr. Harris?" It was my voice. Exactly my voice. Every word, every breath, every tiny detail. I think something followed me. "Please, open the door." I felt my stomach drop. I was standing inside the apartment. So, who was outside? The old man grabbed my wrist so tightly, it actually hurt. "I told you, it copies people." Outside, my voice spoke again. "I am scared. I don't want to be alone. Please." For just a moment, I almost believed it. It sounded exactly like me. Then, silence. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. A full minute passed. Then, slow footsteps echoed through the hallway. One step at a time. The sound stopped. Right outside, apartment 504. My apartment. The old man quietly pulled back the curtain, just enough to look outside. After a few seconds, he stepped away from the window. "It's waiting," he whispered. "It always waits until sunrise." Neither of us slept. Neither of us spoke. We simply sat there, listening to the silence. Finally, the first rays of sunlight slipped through the curtains. At almost the exact same moment, the hallway lights came back on. The old man looked through the peephole. Then he nodded. "Go." I slowly unlocked his door. The hallway looked normal again. No darkness. No extrañas voices. Nothing. I walked toward apartment 504. My heart stopped. The door was already open. I was certain. I had heard it slam shut hours earlier. Slowly, I stepped inside. Everything looked untouched. The television was off. The kitchen was exactly as I'd left it. Nothing seemed wrong, until I noticed a folded piece of paper sitting on the dining table. I walked over, picked it up, unfolded it. There was only one sentence. "Thank you for letting me out." My hands instantly went numb. I rushed back into the hallway and ran straight toward apartment 503. The door was wide open. I stepped inside. The apartment was empty, completely empty. Dust covered the floor. Cobwebs filled every corner. It looked abandoned for years. Then I looked down. Across the dust, fresh footprints. One pair, leading out of the apartment. Not in, out. I didn't call the police. I didn't tell anyone. By that afternoon, I packed everything I owned and left. I never looked back. 3 months later, I was living in another city. Different apartment, different job, different life. I convinced myself it was finally over. One rainy evening, I came home from work. As I reached my front door, I noticed something sticking out from underneath it. A folded piece of paper. I picked it up, slowly opened it. Inside, only 6 words. "I found your new address." My heart froze. Without thinking, I looked across the hallway. The apartment opposite mine had been empty since the day I moved in. At least, that's what the landlord had told me. Then, very slowly, the doorknob turned. The door opened. just a few inches. And from the darkness inside, someone whispered, "You're late."